Good morning, everyone. Welcome back here in our ECCMID TV studio from the Bella Center here in Copenhagen, Denmark. My name is Judith Cohen. I'm your anchor during all the ECCMID TV sessions, and I'm very pleased with my next two guests who have just taken place here on the couch next to me. They are the recipients of the Young Investigator Awards. So next to me, I have on my far left, Jacob Bodilsen from Denmark, actually. So this is a home game for you. And Anne Wyllie, who is from the United States. Both of you have been already awarded the Young Investigator Award. You haven't received it yet, I believe, because that session is going to take place this afternoon during a symposium in which you will both also present the research that won you this prestigious award. I think a nice detail is that just before this interview at 10 a.m. this morning, I had Professor John Friedman here, who is a scientific affairs officer from the ESCCMID Executive Committee, and he told me that he was involved in the judging of the final Young Investigator Awards, and he told me it was very competitive this year and very difficult, and they added an extra award, but still that the people that received the awards were of an outstanding performance, and so this is really an outstanding achievement. So already congratulations to you both on winning this award. I would like to take this opportunity of having both of you here in our TV studio to just hear a little bit about the research that you will be presenting this afternoon during the award ceremony as well. So just our TV viewers can have just a little teaser, a little piece of what you're going to be sharing and what we're supposed to be looking out for. So, Anne, could I start with you? Because
Yeah,
I
sure.
believe your research is on saliva.
That is right.
Yeah, which I think you are calling it as a reliable sample type for sustainable surveillance and outbreak response efforts. Now, I can have a lot of imagination about what you mean with that, but I think it's best if you could share with us a little bit more detail on your research.
Yeah, so I've actually been working with saliva as a sample type for about the last 10 years, well, maybe even longer now. I was primarily using it to explore the carriage of a bacteria, Streptococcus pneumoniae. It's an important pathogen, but also human commensal. But so then going into the pandemic and just seeing all the troubles that we were having around the world with the gold standard nasopharyngeal swab, I wondered whether we could apply what we knew with saliva for a bacteria now to this novel respiratory virus. And just fortunately, my team was very supportive of that, so we started looking into saliva for the detection of SARS-CoV-2. We found that saliva is a great medium for testing for SARS-CoV-2, and what we really wanted to do with that was to make testing more accessible. So testing has been really expensive. It can be really limiting in terms of the costs that are required to get out there. And so we've worked really hard to make saliva testing as cheap as possible, as little resources as required. So then, if you can...
So how do you make it cheaper?
So what we actually did is we took out the sort of standard process of RNA extraction. That was a more expensive step. So we realized that you don't actually have to do RNA extraction to test. You can go straight into PCR, basically. And we also just showed that detection in saliva is very stable, so you don't need all these fancy buffers, you don't need fancy preservatives, you don't need fancy collection devices. You can take a very simple plastic tube. And so this has worked really well for making a very, very cheap test. And what we're now finding is that we can also target other respiratory pathogens such as influenza and RSV. And therefore, we can use this to hopefully more sustainably test. If you can do a much cheaper test, you can have more tests out there, you can get more data for research studies, for example. So
And this is like the standard PCR that you're doing in the saliva, or is there also like an application towards more rapid testing, or does that influence the reliability probably?
Yeah, so at the moment we stuck to PCR. There have been a number of people who are looking into saliva for more rapid testing or other novel techniques as well. For your standard rapid antigen test, there's a lot of heterogeneity in saliva as a sample type just between individuals, so it has made it more challenging for the rapid antigen testing, but it is working very well for PCR testing.
Yeah. And do you see more applications of saliva as in outbreaks, or more in the virus, within viruses? Or
Yeah, we actually had an example of this during the monkeypox outbreak last
Yes.
year. So we were actually fortunate to receive some saliva samples from lesion-positive individuals.
Yeah.
And the same thing, we just took the Mpox PCR test that was being used by others, put that into our sort of workflow, and we also showed you can use this very, very basic testing protocol for the detection of Mpox. And so the same thing is that, if this provides a very low-cost test where, outbreaks of Mpox do continue, you can have a lot more tests out there, hopefully try and detect people maybe before they even become, lesion positive, to really help mitigate spread between individuals.
Yeah, well, as I understood, it's all around here, of course, at the ECCMID. I mean, better diagnostics is the huge unmet need still in containing all the outbreaks.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
So wonderful research. Well, congratulations again on winning this award.
Thank you.
I hope that your presentation at the symposium for the award ceremony will also be as interesting. Over to you, Jacob, because yours is more of a love story, I believe, if I look at the title,
Right.
which is Head Over Heels, How I Fell in Love with CNS infection.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
I
we
had a
want to
hard
know
time.
all about it.
Well, just a disclaimer, I'm happily married, but
You're happily married.
but when I started doing research, I was interested in CNS infections, and then it turned out to be a polyamorous love story because there were so many different CNS infections that were
Yeah.
so interesting. So I think that's the catch of the title.
What grasped your attention? What made you? What is it about
So-
CNS infections?
So when I started as a doctor at the Department of Infectious Diseases, we sometimes discussed how to manage these patients, and we were often in doubt. And then you look at some studies, and you figure out, okay, maybe we could use some more data here, and could we contribute in some way? And that's what really started it. So it's really just the discussions at the conference table that sparked my interest. And it's
Yeah.
difficult to study. It's rare diseases, so you need a lot of collaborators, I think, to get enough data to make meaningful
Yeah.
analysis. And there still has, of course, inherent limitations due to the study design of being retrospective observational studies. Mostly, we're doing prospective studies now as well, but it's just difficult to engage in that kind of research with these.
Do you have a favorite CNS infection?
So it used to be bacterial meningitis, but these years it's brain abscess.
Brain abscess.
Yeah.
Wow.
So,
Yeah. But how do you? I mean, you mentioned it's a rare disease, so you need to collaborate in order to get enough patients material, probably also.
Yep.
How is that working? Is
So-
that across the border or just within Denmark?
So locally in Aalborg, where I work, it's worked very nice because we have a tight collaboration with the Department of Clinical Microbiology. And then in Denmark, we have the Danish Study Group of Infections of the Brain, which has been ongoing since 2015. And it involves all the departments of infectious diseases in Denmark. So we're able to do these nationwide population-based cohort studies where we include all patients that are managed with CNS infections in Denmark. So that's a real strength, I think. It is still, people still treat patients differently because each patient is different, and some doctors make different choices. So of course there are some limitations to that. But then ESCMID and ESCIP has really been a wonderful platform to engage. So we also have these international collaborations. So
And
that's
your
worked
own
really
research,
well.
does it focus more on like the clinical side of the CNS
Yeah, it has.
infections? The clinical.
So it's
Yeah.
been mostly clinical and also some registry-based, so it's epidemiological research. And then recently we started working on a pig model, actually.
A pig model.
A pig model. So we're trying to diversify a bit, I guess, but we're intrigued about. There are no new treatments in the pipeline, so we need to do better with the treatment that we have at hand. So we want to optimize drug delivery into the brain, so we're trying to accurately measure what is the drug penetration within the brain parenchyma itself for encephalitis would be relevant, instead of just CSF samples, which is really a proxy for what is going on inside the brain.
Yeah.
So hopefully I think we have some good projects there, and we're presenting them at a poster here. And hopefully it will be published later this year. And we need to work more on the model. It's a new model, and of course there are going to be baby errors, and we need to take care of that, but we're working on it.
And what is going to be your research focus for the upcoming years, do you think?
For me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Brain abscess still, I think. We're doing a randomized trial on early switch to orals, which is controversial in some countries.
Yeah.
So we want to make sure, we hope that it's non-inferior to standard treatment, but it's also again a difficult trial. We have maybe, in the end, we hope to have 40 sites involved, so, and they each include 5 patients, 10 patients. So
Yeah.
it's a lot of organizing. So I need to improve on that, on those kind of skills. But
Yeah.
it's a learning curve.
Well, at least to get more collaborations, you have some visibility now here on
Yeah,
ECCMID
that's
TV,
true.
and especially with winning the award. And for you, Anne, your research focus for the upcoming years is still going to be on saliva.
It is. So,
What do you hope to achieve?
well, I mean, I think we've seen with how much testing there's been for SARS-CoV-2 over the last 3 years, just how much we now understand this virus. And, again, if we have a low-cost approach for going out there and studying other viruses, other respiratory pathogens in the community to the same degree, can we do more community-based surveillance? So again, having very cheap testing options out there so that we can also better understand how these respiratory pathogens move throughout the community, what the true prevalence is, because, so often the cases that we identify are those that report to the clinic. And so, thinking about RSV, it's those who go and get tested in the clinic when they've got, probably quite bad RSV infection. But say, for example, how many cases do we actually have out in the community that maybe are more mild cases? If we're thinking about being able to isolate that virus, sequence that virus, we can understand, how many sort of introductions there have been to the community, how sort of many different transmission chains are going on. So just sort of, take this test for SARS-CoV-2, we can expand it out for these other respiratory pathogens, target a number of them at the same time, and just work to really understand how they are sort of moving in our communities that we don't really have a good feel of at the moment otherwise.
Wonderful. Well, enough to do still.
Yes.
Yes. And hopefully enough time also.
Exactly.
You'll manage. Thank you so much both for coming here and explaining our viewers a little bit more about your research fields. Thank you. And thank you all for watching. We will be back here at the clock of 12 with one of our most popular program or agenda points, which is our Lucky Wheel of Fortune, your opportunity to win some really cool ESCMID and ECCMID merchandise prizes. So please come and join us. There are QR codes being distributed all over the Congress. If you see a picture of a lucky wheel with the QR code, make sure to join us via your QR code at noon, and then maybe you will be selected by me personally to join me here in the studio, and I get to swing the wheel for you and see if I can win you a very cool prize. So please join me at noon. Hope to see you then.